We got a big Pete Sousa show for you today. We got Tim Brando, a guy who crashed into my life, I think in the mid-'80s. And he was the best play-by-play announcer around, in my opinion. And he made me want to continue to watch. He was paired with Dick Vitale early in his career. And that's when I got a taste of Timmy B. And unlike most announcers or broadcasters that are so high profile, he has stayed in our life at an elite level for, how many years is that? 85, Zach?
Oh, man. Almost 30?
40 almost.
40, yeah.
Almost
You're right.
40 years. And he looks not like he would have been there for that long. We talked to him about a serious topic, though. Howie Schwab, who passed away at ESPN. Tim really adored him and had some really great things to say about him on social media after Howie passed. And Tim shared some incredible stories and wisdom. And he's always interesting and entertaining. After that, we talked to Cam Stewart, who is locked on Baylor, a Big 12 guy. We talked to him about Baylor, the fact that no players got drafted in the NFL draft. We talk about what makes Cam tick, and we also talk about him joining us here at the Rogue Media Network. You don't want to miss this one. You've been warned. All right, chilling here with Zach Attack as we get ready for, what episode is this?
This is 7.
Stop it.
Yeah, no, this is episode 7.
Is it really?
It is. Yeah. I'm doing the math.
No,
yeah.
No,
this is episode 7. I don't want to have to count on my fingers, but it is 7.
I count on my fingers all the time.
Okay.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I can go through guess, but yeah, it's 7.
I remember the first day. But I was over there on that side of the room.
Yeah.
God, I was so tired. We had to get it done, and then I had to go to a hoops game in Iowa. We got it done.
We did.
It's been amazing, dude.
It was. I've had a blast.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's not over. I said it's.
I'm not saying. I was just saying, like, so far, I've had a blast.
Zach, do these glasses look ridiculous?
No.
Okay, that was way too slow.
They didn't look. I don't think they look ridiculous. I don't know what you're going for.
I don't know. It'll look cool.
Put them back on. I'm not saying they look bad. I don't think they. Yeah. No, they look.
I'm going to leave them on.
You look cool.
But I've been going back and forth. I mean, to look cool. I want to see. That's what I'm going for.
Well, that is probably the most important.
Notice that was the second thing I said.
After looking cool.
Such a shame. Such a shame. My mother had my ears pinned back when I was a little kid. It definitely had an effect on me. Well, the ears were growing and they were getting bigger.
I got you.
So she intervened
and pinned them back.
Well, she didn't do it herself, dude. She had somebody. She had a woman do it.
I thought she was doing it herself.
No.
Okay.
Could you imagine?
No.
She should be in prison if that was the case. No, it was a friend of hers, Marcy Fitzpatrick. Marcy came over to the house. Marcy and my mom grew up together. Marcy was wildly talented as a surgeon, and Marcy was looking at me and was like, that left ear could be corrected. I could do that, and we could do it under your insurance. And my mother, who has never shied away from looking good or trying to, was like, we're in. and the next thing I knew, Christmas break my freshman year in high school, I was being wheeled into the hospital, looking up at this dude named Wayman, telling him, I said, man, I'm scared. He said, you'll be all right.
The one time it just made me think, the one time I had surgery was after I graduated high school. I tore my labrum playing football in high school, and so they had to reattach it. But I remember to deaden it, they had to give me, big needle shot right into the neck. Well, they missed where they were going, and they hit a nerve. And so I'm sitting there laying in the bed, and my arm is just flopping up and down on the bed. They're like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, it's okay. I have no control, though.
That's what happened. It's so ironic. And you would think I'm like making this up, but when I got this ear surgery, something happened, and I got home from the hospital with my mom, and I was going like this. And I was like, Mom, I can't stop doing this. And she put me in the bathtub and gave me a Sports Illustrated playoff preview edition with Bruce Smith on the front.
Okay.
It didn't solve the problem.
Did you just read it till
it eventually went. No, I was terrified. It eventually went away. All right, but bringing us back to that time, a guy who was a huge part of my life then and now, from a distance, is Tim Brando. And Tim is a guy who nobody calls a better game, I don't think, and nobody is more exciting to listen to, and nobody understands, in my opinion, the craft of a play-by-play guy. And there's so many serious things that go on in sports, but it's the toy department at the end of the day. And he understands that, and he's really got a stranglehold on that. So we get to talk to Tim, and then, of course, I talked about it. We talked to Cam Stewart about Baylor in the Big 12. Any thoughts coming into the show?
I think it's going to be a great one. I can tell you a little radio or, podcast magic that I have listened to some of the Tim Brando one, putting it, together, and it is fantastic. I nerded out. It's a small thing I know, but him showing off his spotter boards, dude, like something like that, So I loved it.
When you get a guy like that that's totally engaged, which in my experiences with him, he always has been, it's really cool.
No, it was great.
All right, let's get to Timmy B. You have been, you came through my living room in the mid-'80s at ESPN, and you've been there ever since, which is pretty amazing. And so your longevity in your career is something we could talk about forever. And you've always made sports fun, so I just wanted to thank you for that. You do an amazing job, and you keep it so fun and light, and you always have.
Well, thanks, Pete. I mean, it's supposed to be, right? We did grow up, my generation, in simpler times. So we signed up for, in essence, the toy department. I mean, that's the way we viewed it when we were coming up. If we wanted to be involved in controversy and negativity, we were going to be in news. We weren't going to be in sports, right? So we were going to be the outlet for those that were seeking refuge in their lives to find some happiness, So I try to continue to bring that to the games that we're describing. And I know it's a serious business. I know people are more on edge now than they used to be. That's our culture. It's just the evolution of life. And to some extent, I presume I'm that way too. But at the same time, there are those moments when I think we need to remind ourselves that this is just that. It's fun. So let's have it. And it's funny because there are times when you have to get down to business in a game, just the facts, what's important and what isn't. But I've oftentimes said that I don't necessarily gauge what great is in our profession by simply how a big moment is handled. I think if you're doing a game that's less than thrilling and you're somehow able to keep those that are still with you while the rest of the world is tuned out, but those hardcores are still watching, if you're able to make them happy and you're able to keep them engaged, then that's the mark of a great broadcaster. Anybody can handle a big moment if you've got great judgment, but not everybody can handle a really bad game that you're trying to make entertaining and to some extent informative for the people that are still with you. So I oftentimes say we can all get lucky and have those big moments, and how you handle it is going to be your legacy. But I value the great broadcaster. When I watch a game and I'm watching other young people coming up broadcasting, I want to see how they handle a bad game. It's 10-0 in the 8th and you're calling the game for the home team and they're behind, or it's 45-7. We're starting the 4th in a game that we thought was going to be good. So as you're emptying your bucket, how good is that bucket? I want to know how good that bucket is the broadcaster has at his disposal. So I view it a little differently because I grew up knowing this was what I was going to do. It's all I can do. As you saw, just trying to get on with you today was not easy for me. So I don't have my own engineering system here at the Chateau, but I do feel like this particular craft, the craft of broadcasting, whether it is in the studio or at a game, is something that I was born to do.
You do it well, and part of your career, you mentioned news. You started off, or part of your start was in a newsroom in Baton Rouge, and at that point in time, you got the opportunity to start to freelance for ESPN. You're calling games, and you start to have some real success, right? This is around like 85, 86, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so you end up doing the first iteration of College Game Day. Steve Borenstein, it's his brainchild, and you're in the driver's seat of this brainchild. You, Lee Corso, Beano Cook, if I'm correct, right? And
Yeah.
this is some context to where Howard Schwab comes into your life. Which is, I wanted to bring some context to somebody. You had such a beautiful post about him on Facebook, and it was a different perspective than I had been taking in over the course of the past week or so. When did he really officially come crashing into your life?
The moment I was told that I wasn't going to be doing play-by-play for college football and that I was going to be hosting this show called College Game Day, which when I signed to move up to Connecticut, I had been freelancing, as you mentioned, with them from 1985 all the way through 86. And I did every imaginable sport that they could get on the air. And back in those days, they were struggling to get, quality programming because Getty Oil owned it. They didn't have a lot of money. So I think probably the biggest moment that I called in football was the Herschel Walker run in the USFL to break the single season rushing record in June of 1985. And I did that in a week, Pete, where someone, I think it was Wes Durham maybe earlier this week, was talking about young Mike Monaco's schedule this past and all the games he did. And it reminded me immediately. And I know Mike, and I've worked with Wes. Wes and I did ACC games together for Raycom when I was doing their ACC tournaments and whatnot. We would share that post after Tim Brandt retired. So for about 4 years, and I knew his dad. I knew Woody really, really well from his days in North Carolina. When he wrote this complimentary tweet about on X about Monaco's schedule this week and all that he had done, I was reminded of that week when I was doing the game in the Meadowlands with Mike Hafner. Now, there's a name from the past. Broncos wide receiver that worked at NBC for a number of years. We're doing the game in East Rutherford, New Jersey on a Thursday. And then I fly from there to Hull, Quebec, Canada for a Saturday night PKA karate show with this, I want to say, middleweight world champion, Jean-Yves Theriault. And PKA karate, for those of you that don't know, would be sort of taekwondo with boxing gloves on. In other words, a lot of guys getting kicked in the you-know-what, all right? plus they're boxing. Combination MMA, right, UFC kind of thing, if you want to modernize it, call it that. But they were introduced and they came into a squared circle. It looked like a heavyweight championship bout, all right? That's what it looked like.
How many people were there?
So I do that on Saturday, and then I fly from there to Starkville, Mississippi to do a Sunday night college baseball game with Rafael Palmeiro and Will Clark playing against LSU, and Skip Bertman was in his second year as head coach at LSU in college baseball. We used to have a Sunday night college baseball game every week. So those were 3 different sports in 2 different countries over a 4-day span. And I was loving every minute of it. Okay, the journey. You always see me say at the end of a lot of my posts, hashtag the journey's the best part, which it is.
Yes.
And when I see these moments for guys like Monaco and others, and it was really nice of Wes to do that. I think more broadcasters, more guys that do what we do need to support one another. It's a very competitive business. It's easy to start thinking about, well, I should have gotten that job instead of that guy. And, we really don't take good care of one another. We should be better to one another, in my view. So I try to do that on social media as much as I can. And sometimes people are confused by even that. How can he be so nice to somebody? They're like, oh, he's just looking for a compliment. There are always these rogue underbellies of anything that you try to do that's nice in social media. But that's who I am. That's how I roll. That's what I do. But to answer your question, I was told by Bornstein Steve said to me, Tim, here's what you got to do. You're going to do the first preview show in college football history. They didn't do ABC. Pino was doing halftimes and postgame. They never had a pregame. We're going to be like the NFL today of college football. Okay, that's what it's going to be. And I'm like, okay, I'm in. It wasn't what I want. It wasn't what I wanted.
Yeah, were you buying what he was selling? Were you buying it?
Huh?
Were you buying what he was selling?
Oh yeah, I was buying it because by that time Musburger was a star, and he was telling me, "You're going to be my college football star." he was selling me on it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, that sounds pretty good. I can do that. I like the idea that my versatility in both the studio as well as play-by-play was there. At the time I was hired at ESPN, Getty Oil had just sold to Cap Cities when I became full-time. Bornstein had just taken over. A lot of the people from the old regime, Scotty Connell, who had been at NBC, and several others were in charge of production in 85 and 86. They were sort of moved, not out, but they didn't have the position of head of production as Steve Bornstein did. He was taking control. I mean, he was flat out taking control. And he was a fan of mine. And that was his vision for me. And he also had a vision that the guys in the studio were going to be the stars in sportscasting, not necessarily the play-by-play guys, which he and I, kind of went to battle over that. I was never satisfied just being in the studio, and my contract said as much. I'm going to do at least 30 shows on the road. That's the only way I was going to move up there. And at that time, none of the studio people, not Mees, not Berman, not Bob Lee, none of them were able to go out and do games. So you can imagine the old guard when I got there and had the deal like that. I thought I was going to be persecuted by those people. I thought I was in trouble. But I came in the same week as John Saunders, my best friend in broadcasting there. He came in from Baltimore and I came in from Baton Rouge. We were paired together to do Sports Centers, but John was going to be his hockey guy and his baseball guy and his basketball guy. I was going to be his college football guy. And he was just like, Brando, Berman is the bomb on the NFL. When we get the NFL, he's the guy. This is college, you're the guy. That was the way Steve looked at it. And so I was flattered that he felt that way. And then Terry Lingner, who was our coordinating producer, is now an independent producer in Indiana, in Indianapolis, does a lot of great work. Terry was one of the cornerstones and foundation members of ESPN success. He and Steve Anderson were the first two coordinating producers they had. Terry said, okay, Tim, here's your guy. He's your research guy, Howie. And Howie was hired, not full-time at that point, not a staffer, but he is your guy for college football, all things college football. And so this was in the fall of 86. And after that season, by the end of the 87 season, he was made staff as a staff researcher because they understood that what he was doing for us, he could do for SportsCenter. Okay. Why wouldn't you use, as Dan Patrick said, Google before Google, Howie Schwab, to be kind of the guy that was handling all your factual information all day long. But that was just an opportunity that Howie seized upon. I think all of us in this business have to look at our careers and say, how do we take care of ourselves when there are found opportunities? Okay, when an opportunity comes your way, what do you do with it? And I think that's the key. Okay, we're going to get breaks and we're going to get disappointments. And how you handle disappointments is important. There are times when I haven't done a good job of that. But I think even more importantly, how you handle opportunities. What do you do with those opportunities? If you're just living in the here and now, you might get frustrated and not go anywhere. But if you take advantage of that opportunity, you can use that opportunity to jettison your career. And in Howie's own way, behind the scenes, that's what he was doing. And he had in his mind a vision of not just research for college football, but how badly does this startup network that was still in its infancy need him? And Terry Lingner, I think, and I quoted him in my post that you were talking about. He said he was a absolute secret weapon for a startup network like ESPN, and he clearly was. All due respect to my friends that are there now, I don't think any of their studio shows, with the exception of Steve Levy in the hockey studio the other night, when he had a really heartfelt thought about Howie and what he meant to ESPN through the years. Anything that was written for any of those SportsCenter shows that had to be pre-approved, I don't think they did not point out how transformative career Howie Schwab had, and how he really was the backbone of the information success that they had to be able to call themselves the worldwide leader. If you're going to call yourself the worldwide leader, you better be able to prove it. And if you get something wrong, and trust me, even then, when you got something wrong, it was noticed. It wasn't noticed by as many people because we didn't have as much of an audience. We only had about 25 million subs in 1986, 87, in that era. But if you were going to be taken seriously, you had to get facts correct, and Howie made certain of that. So in building not only an opportunity for himself, but an entire department, when he was let go, and I think that's the most heinous thing that ESPN ever did, and all of its many cutbacks that were less than desirable, because a lot of other great people were let go, many producers, directors, and people that served in all kinds of different areas that make a network function. But Howie's even more so because of what he had done through the years for literally every sport that they had on their air, plus SportsCenter on a daily basis. How you could let him go made no sense to me. That was a bottom line across the board cut where they had an entire department, and they said, okay, Howie is the head of that department. He's making way too much money. So let's get rid of him and let these underlings do the job. That was just beneath contempt to me. And Steve Bornstein had built that place in so many ways on loyalty. He and I were at odds, and I left ultimately and moved back home to Louisiana in large measure because I couldn't be a team player and stay in Connecticut. My wife was from Louisiana. I was from Louisiana. And I was like, hey, I can do this. If you want to fly me up to be in the studio, I'd be happy to do that. But I'm not going to stay up here year round and do 230 sports centers when I could be out doing some other stuff.
Yeah.
And I had some opportunities to do that. So Steve and I were at odds then. And I did get a new deal short term, and I stayed at ESPN another 4 years. But my importance to the company was lost when I left Connecticut. And so I knew I was on a short leash after that. And by the mid-'90s, I was gone and on my way to Turner.
Well, I think I read somewhere that you said that Steve told you, looks like you've done all right for yourself, right?
Yeah. Well, because Steve ultimately left too, right?
Yeah.
And went to the NFL, and he was the guy that raised the number that ESPN was going to have to pay to hold on to the NFL. So, it's a small business, and what goes around comes around. And I was at a meeting at CBS. I'd been at Turner in the mid-'90s. I was doing Raycom and Jefferson Pilot SEC games in the early window, and I was flourishing and working around the clock. I was doing Braves, Hawks for Turner, and I was doing the playoffs, the NBA for them. In addition, I was literally working around the clock back then, and CBS hired me. And by the time I ran into Steve and he was running the NFL, it was at a college football and NFL seminar that we had together in New York at Bobby Vans. And Steve tapped me on the shoulder and he said, "Hey, Brando, give me a blank and drink." And I said, "Yeah, sure, Steve." And we laughed and joked about it. And because by that time, Fowler had moved in. He didn't replace me. Bob Carpenter did for 1 year. So Chris wasn't even ready to be the host in their minds when I left. He came a year later. But that job had morphed into an iconic position. And you see now Chris is doing the biggest games in college football because of the leverage he gained from doing it. I would have never had and didn't have the patience to be at a place that long, to wait that long for that opportunity and to do all the things he did. And Chris really invested himself in doing that show. For me, College Game Day was great, and I learned a lot from it. I think I became a better broadcaster because of my time in Connecticut, but I was always in a hurry to get to the booth, always in a hurry to get to the games. I even at CBS, the opportunity to host the College Football Today and the SEC on CBS was in large measure because of what I'd done years earlier at ESPN. I know that. But CBS also gave me opportunities to do a lot of games, a lot of big games, football and basketball.
Yeah, you were doing the NFL while you were doing some of the
I
college
did.
NFL today.
That was before. Yeah, that was before there was an NFL Network and before there were Thursday night games, and so Spencer and I would double up.
Yeah, you guys were in the studio and then you do games. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, we'd do a game. We'd do the studio on Saturday, fly to the NFL site on a Thursday, meet with coaches, leave our material at the hotel we were staying at for the NFL game, go to New York, do the studio, and then run out to Teterboro, hop in a jet, and go, somewhere usually close by, like Cincinnati or Cleveland. We did a lot of Achilles Smith.
Dude, I remember. So, Tim, this is a blast from the past.
When they were really bad. A lot of that, a lot of Bills, a lot of Bengals. The Chargers Bengals, that had our name written all over it, back in those days.
You guys, so I was lucky enough, I was working for Gary Horton in a company called The War Room. So we would come by the studio on Saturday sometimes. I'd be there with Todd McShay. And you and Spencer were so generous with your time. And I remember you were the first person that really illustrated that Achilles Smith was in trouble. You said we had him. We talked to him pregame, and he was pretty obvious he wasn't 1,000% invested.
Yeah, Todd was he and Pat Kerwin were busting their chops, man, with the NFL show.
Yeah,
and so we all would congregate together, usually over at Ben Benson's, and get the latest. That was only 2 blocks away from where we were staying on West 54th between 6th and 7th.
Yeah.
At the Regal Royal.
The Regal Royal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So back to Schwab real quick. How important is a guy like that for a studio host or a play-by-play guy? I think sometimes, and you're pretty illuminating or transparent, I should say, about how important those guys are in helping you. I mean, that helps your confidence. It helps your timing. It obviously factually.
Right. Well, in baseball and basketball, there is no guy that's in the booth that's more important than your statistician. Okay. In football, he's still very important, but your spotter is even more important.
Yeah.
Your relationship with your spotter, A, needs to be good, and B, you need to trust him. Okay. When the ball is tipped, and he's doing this, you're able to say it was tipped. Because when you're calling the game, you're watching the whole field. But you're also, when the ball's dead, going to the monitor because you want to keep up with what graphics or replays. And you're also listening to the producer tell you where to go and what Spencer or whoever the analyst might be is where he's going. There's a lot of choreography in that booth that people don't realize until they get up there. So your spotter is very important. Brett Bender, who's Gary Bender's son, has been with me for a couple of decades now doing that.
That's somebody you trust.
Somebody I really trust. And a lot of guys don't do their boards themselves, their spotting boards. I do. So he's got to come to terms with the way I do things, and he has. So I'm old school in that regard.
You do your own boards. You write them out.
I do.
Wow.
Yeah, I do. I'll show you here real quick.
Yeah. I got to be honest. Even though I do the Tony Britt. Wow.
Here's the Ducks and the Trojans from last year. Bo Nix against Caleb Williams. All right. So that's, let's see, that would be the Oregon offense against the USC defense, such as it was. And this is the USC offense against the Oregon defense.
So when you have a Thursday, Saturday, you're still writing out both?
I'm doing it myself because if I don't do it myself, again, this is a baby boomer thing.
Yeah.
I may not really look at it that much. There are some anecdotal things that I would write down.
Yeah.
I only want to have to write it once when I'm doing my meetings. So my skeleton boards have got to be ready before my meetings start. So, on Monday and Tuesday, I'm really working on that pretty hard and then looking at tape. In those days, we would go in to meet the NFL guys on Thursday instead of Friday, because on Friday, we need to get to New York to get ready to do the studio show on Saturday. Huh. So we would go in, spend all day Thursday where the home team was playing in the NFL, get through with that, hustle to the airport, Spencer and I would, and then fly in. Our producers would, obviously, for the game, would stay where they are. We would always meet with the away team via conference call. for those games. And the NFL approved that. They were fine with it. Dennis Lewin was in charge in those days, and he trusted Spencer and me, so we were fine. And the coaches loved it because it meant their Friday was free. If we were coming, it meant Friday was free. So, but that was a lot of fun, and it kept me on the bike. It kept me on the play-by-play bike. And as I said, we only did probably 5 or 6 games, but on occasion they were big games. On occasion we got better games. I remember one year we were assigned, and I don't know why. I'm sure enough some of the other play-by-play guys were pissed. Like Don Crickey or someone like that. It was like doing the 5 or 6 game, because we're not doing that. We're doing like the 7th game. We wound up doing the Bengals at the Jaguars when Brunell was trying to get a #1 seed, in the AFC. I mean, that was a thrill to get to do that game. And Blake was playing quarterback with the Bengals. They weren't bad. They played pretty well.
Jeff Blake,
Blake.
Yeah.
And we got a good game out of that. That was the Tony Baselli, Jaguars team that.
Oh yeah, they never could get over the hump and get there.
Yeah. But they did get they did win that game, and they got the top seed, and they wound up, I think.
They lost.
They wound up.
Did they lose to Tennessee?
Bounced, I think. To Tennessee, I think.
Yeah.
But it was a blast, and we also got the record-breaking single game rushing record for Lewis for the Ravens against the Browns.
Yeah.
If you remember that.
Sure.
The former Tennessee running back that played for the Ravens set the single game rushing record. And that was a thrill, and not necessarily a game that people were pining away to get the call, but as it turned out, I think that was in 2000, maybe.
Yeah, it was.
Jamal Lewis.
Yeah.
That sound right?
Yeah.
So there were thrilling moments that we got, even though it was a lot of work but it was a lot of fun, and I was getting to wear all the hats that I wanted to wear. But to your point, those guys are incredibly important to you in terms of the play-by-play guy getting the information that he needs. If you just are trying to do it on your own and you're just looking at notes, you can go through mounds and mounds of notes. You need to have guys that can find the things that they know work on television. And good, bad, and indifferent. Not always just what their strengths are, but what their weaknesses are too.
Yeah.
So that's very helpful to us. But I don't know that management has ever quite understood. And I think the Schwab passing is to me proof of that. Because if you look back at what was said, and I'm not disregarding that some of what was said had to be said. But Howie was much more than just a statistician / producer that became noteworthy because of Stump the Schwab. I mean, that was, to me, the portrayal of his impact. If you watched ESPN most of last week, that's what you were hearing. And, that played really well for the people that were in their mid to late 30s or 40s that knew about Stump the Schwab. But they didn't know about, hey, he was hired to be the first researcher in network history for College Game Day. And it evolved into this. And soon he became in charge of the bottom line. Who's the guy that's making sure what you're seeing on the bottom line is showing you all that information 24 hours a day? It was Howie. Okay.
Wow.
I mean, and his staff. So he was much more, than just a statistician / producer that would become more well-known because Stuart, Scott, and he did Stump the Schwab. I mean, and God bless Stuart and the effort. He did a great job on that show, but Howie was much more than that. That was my point.
Well, one last thing about Howie, and then I'll let you get on with your day. You mentioned in that post, and I thought this was really cool, about his personality. You said he was charming, and he was sort of just had this way about him. And you said that was sort of like lightning in a bottle. Somebody that was that young and that talented, it was rare for them to have that ability to be humble and just kind of know how to roll with it. Somebody who got it. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, he could be Howie was such a likable, charming guy. He could also rib you. He could get away with some digs because no one could ever stay. You can never get mad at Howie. So he loved to bust balls. And of course, game day originally was all about ball busting. Okay, that whole setup was ball busting because Bino busted balls better than anybody. Okay, and everyone was, everyone was targeted. It didn't matter who you were, what your background was. Unbelievable. He would get going, and Howie loved to, and he would imitate Bino from time to time. He would call me, Brando, you're the very, very best. And I love Terry. I talk about my wife. I love Terry. She's Italian, but she's not a ball buster. So many women are ball busters. She's not. She gets it. That kind of stuff. Howie would do the same thing. And one year I was doing, and this was what happened with anchors sometimes in their off season. They would throw you on another show. Like they didn't have the NBA, but they had this show called NBA Today. And somebody normally hosted it that was one of the Sports Center anchors, but they were on vacation. They asked me to do it. So I get through with my little piece, and I would say, I enjoyed my stay on the NBA Today. And Howie's like, you effing did not. You can't stand the NBA. I want to hear that. I enjoyed my stay. He would call me up. I enjoyed my stay on the NBA. So he could bust your chops. The last message I got from Howie Schwab, and this is, and again, I'm going to run the risk of upsetting my dear friend Dick Vitale, who did more for Howie and cared more for Howie than anybody. As Dick has always cared for everybody. That's just who Vitale is. But I have not made it. And he was my first analyst that I ever worked with on a game at ESPN. January 5th, 1985. I have another prop for you. Here's another prop, Pete. This is the check stub, copy of the check stub. January 5th, they paid me on February 5th.
That's my birthday.
January 5th, okay? They paid me on January 5th. You see, ESPN, there's the check, copy of it, for Duke and Virginia for a whopping $300. There you go.
It's not a bad game, though.
It was number 2 Duke against Virginia with Dickie V, which to me, living in Baton Rouge, getting my first opportunity on ESPN at age 29, I was through the roof. Are you kidding me? I was as excited as I could be. Actually, I may have been 28, about to turn 29. Either way, I was excited. But Dick has this gala in May, a fundraiser for, the V Foundation, which is near and dear to his heart. And my schedule for a number of years got in the way of it. And then some sickness at home with my wife has kept me from going. And a couple of years ago, we almost went. COVID hit. I think that was when we were really going to go. And COVID hit, so we couldn't. But I had to tell Howie again that I was not going to be able to make it. So on Wednesday before he passed away on Friday, and I had talked to him maybe on that Tuesday. So Wednesday before he passes away, Friday night going into Saturday morning, I get a message from him. I'm going to hold on to it. I'm never going to, and when I see Dick, I'm going to play it for him because I love Dick and he loves me. But I know he's upset with me because I still haven't made one of these. And I think this is his 19th coming up. I think next year is going to be the 20th gala. So Howie calls me up, leaves a voice message, and it says, Timmy B. Schwab. So I just got off the phone with Dickie B, and he's like, Howie, I can't believe it. Brando's going to go 0 for 19? 0 for 19 on the gala? Are you kidding me? So Schwab wanted to make sure that I knew that Dick was, again, a little bit upset with me. Okay. And so I just texted him back. I tried calling him back, missed him. Then I texted him back. I said, Howie, I've got a full family vacation the last week in May. Terry can only go, I can't take her on trips of that magnitude within 2 weeks. I just can't, and he was like, so he wrote me back. He said, I know. I'm just blanking with you. So that was my last correspondence with Howie. But that's just who he was, and what made him so lovable was that he could, and he knew this, he could give you all kinds of grief, and he knew he could get away with it because he was so beloved. I could go to a St. John's game, literally be 30 minutes from air, and he would be like, so here's some like 5 factoids, Tim, you probably didn't know. And I've got all my research. We've got good people. I use a really good researcher, Jeff Chapman, who does a tremendous job, and his people in terms of putting together the work that I need to get ready for multiple games in a week. And my statistician, Ethan Cooperson, on site is as good as it gets. He works with Nance on the A-team in the truck, coordinating between the graphics as well as the talent stats for Jim. Ethan works with, and when he leaves me, he goes and generally works with Brandon Gaudin some in the Big Ten, with the Big Ten Network. And he does Andrew Catalan's work in the NCAA tournament, who replaced me when I left CBS. So he's tremendous, does great work. But Howie still's got 4 or 5 just pure nuggets that are St. John's related because he loves St. John's so much. And he's like, and he says, well, he leaves me 5 of them. And he says, if you don't use 3, I'm pissed. 1, 2, 4, and 5 are okay, but 3 must make air. And then as the game goes on, I get a running commentary from him. On my phone, I'm checking my phone. People say, why do you have your phone on? Why are you checking your phone? No, I'm not going to social media. I don't give a rat's ass what is being said about me by, viewers. I don't. Now, I might look at them after the game and have some fun with a few of them afterwards if I want. But I'm checking to see if what Howie's telling me, okay? I want affirmation from Howie Schwab that what we're doing here is good.
Yeah.
And I think he's been that way with just about everybody he's ever worked with, okay? And it doesn't matter what network you're on. Howie, once you're one of Howie's guys, you're one of Howie's guys for life. And I'm going to miss that part of him, Pete. You have no idea the sadness that I'll have when, especially when I'm doing a St. John's game in the future, when I can't go to my phone and see, what Howie had to say.
Tim, thank you so much for spending time today talking to me about Schwab and about your career. I could go forever, and I really appreciate it. You mean a lot to a lot of us, so I appreciate it.
Well, thanks, Pete. And I do. The more we talk, the more I remembered our times there in the empty room.
Yeah.
At CBS. It jogged my memory just hearing your voice, and I'm glad to see you're doing so well, and your careers move forward in that area and out front. So many guys that are doing it, now play-by-play or whatever, they came up a different way.
Yeah.
Todd McShay became, Mel Kiper's rival, right?
Yeah.
Well, we saw him in formative days, pumping information into Boomer or Dan Marino or whomever. And, those NFL shows couldn't have gotten on the air without Pat Kerwin, right?
Yes.
Pat's a sweetheart of a guy, and he is a fixture on Sirius. If ever Fox asked me to do a game, and I don't do nearly as many as, I think the last game I did was the 30 for 30 Jameis Winston game when he threw the pick in overtime.
Oh, yeah.
Atlanta game.
Yeah.
To get to 30 interceptions and 30 touchdowns.
Yeah, that was a few years ago.
Yeah, I was back 19. I think it was 2019.
Okay.
And what was great about it was I got to work with Matt Millen, whom I had not worked with, and I love that.
Yeah.
So we had a great time. And it was just before COVID, so it was the 2019 season. And in a December game, like mid-December, I think it was, the last regular season game of the year. And during that period, I would, if ever I got an NFL assignment, I would tune into Pat listen to his show on
Move
Sirius.
the Chains. It's really good.
Move the Chains.
Yeah.
And I would do the same thing with a lot of other guys that I trust, that I know. I've always said, if it's like playing golf with somebody that's maybe 3 or 4 shots better than you, you're going to play better if you're playing with golfers that are better than you. You just are. Okay. If you're any kind of athlete, you're going to step up and play a little bit better. I think as a broadcaster, you're going to be better if you surround yourself with people that know more than you know.
Yeah.
Because I prided myself on my background in college football and history. And there are times when I could call something up immediately because I did care about it. And I cared about it as a child, but I also knew that there were things that happened before I was born. Bino had this great line, and if you don't mind, I might swear a little bit here.
Go ahead.
He would say, "Brando, you're unfucking believable. You know shit that happened before you were born. Do you know how few people do?" And I'm like, "Well, Howie, that's just, my nature. It's college football is about history." "You're damn right it is." He said, "I tell people, just because it happened before you were born doesn't mean it's any less significant." And so true.
So true.
The lack of context today, the single biggest problem in the way sports is being presented today is like everything else. It lacks context. Okay. What's happening with records? Who's the best ever? What made this game the best? People aren't considering the things that happened before them. Okay.
The sense of history is lost a lot of times.
Yeah. I mean, I love Caitlin Clark. I think she's done for women's basketball more than anybody in my lifetime. However, I'm not going to say she was better than Cheryl Miller. I'm not going to say she was better than Lynette Woodard. Okay. I was around then before the NCAA even sanctioned women's basketball. But if the question is who's done the most for women's college basketball, it's got to be Caitlin Clark, no doubt about it. But if the question is who's the greatest women's player of all time, I think that's open for debate. The lack of context, whether it's that sport or the NFL or college football, any of those things, and that little ghost of Bino, and now the spirit of Howie being with him, will always permeate, in my cranium. I can tell you that.
Tim, thank you so much.
Thank you, Pete.
Hey, I really appreciate the time, man. It means a lot.
Oh, this was fun.
Yeah.
I loved it. I'm so glad we figured it out.
Yeah, you got it, man. I'll be in touch. Thank you so much, Tim. All right, Cam Stewart is here, Locked On Baylor. The reason I wanted to talk to him today is because, first of all, he's a member of our team here at the Rogue Media Network.
Yes, baby, yeah.
Now, that means a lot. And to have you here, Baylor grad, but you're from New England, which I love being from Philadelphia.
Yeah.
How did you end up in Texas? How did you end up at Baylor?
Plane.
Yeah. Playing what?
Like flying in a plane. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I thought you said playing. So how? Yeah.
That joke kills, by the way. Pete, just wanted to see something new. Honestly, my dad did spend some time at UT, served some time there, and so there was always kind of that Texas intrigue.
What did he do?
So it was he spent some years at grad school there.
Oh, okay.
He finished at Duke. That's how I got my name.
Oh, yeah.
As a matter of fact. And so I was like, all right, let's see. I love New England, love Massachusetts. Let's try something different. Let's get out. And I don't know, Texas was as far as I could get in this country. And I was like, let's go check it out. Toured the schools here in Texas. Baylor was busting at the time. It might have been the most popular on the rise school in the country. And loved the campus, had a bit of a northern feel to it. I didn't feel like I was in Texas on campus. And have been here ever since. Well, it was almost 10 years.
Now, would you say, sitting in this seat at the Rogue Media Network in the Alico building, that you made a good decision? I asked
in
you
that
because I know you're
specific
telling the truth.
context, maybe not. But then the fact that I'm talking to Pete Sousa, absolutely.
Well, we're going to talk about
Alico.
There's a lot more to unpack here with you, and we're going to do that. We have plenty of time to do that in the future, but I want to talk to you today. Initially, I wanted just to talk to you about the playoffs and about the Bruins and the Celtics.
Yes. Which is the only thing I actually like talking about.
Bruins play tonight.
Yeah.
You play the Maple Leafs. You're
Chance
up
to
3 games to 1 in the series?
Yep. Chance to finish them at home.
Are the Bruins going to win the Stanley Cup?
No.
They're not?
No.
Now, why
I would
are they
love
not?
to.
Is it because you're a jaded fan from Boston that they're not going to win, or are they really not going to win?
Well, they do always mess it up.
Yeah.
They frequently do. But I have been blessed enough to see them win a Stanley Cup in my lifetime. I don't know if the defense core will hold up, Pete. I think that's what it is. They got the goaltending, and they're getting bottom 6 scoring, which has been a problem in years past. I like the top end of this D core. I don't know if it's deep enough to get them there. They can win the cup. I just don't think they will.
All right, Celtics.
I mean, they better, right?
So they bet. Do you think? I want to get your thoughts real quickly before we get to Baylor on Joe Mazzulla.
Mm-hmm.
It's so interesting to me that he flies under the radar until something terrible happens. Like right now, nobody's talking about Joe Mazzulla, but in the second round, when they're tied 2-2 and people feel like he doesn't call a timeout, they're going to drag him all over the court and wipe the floor with him. Your thoughts on Joe Mazzulla?
Yeah, he's in kind of a no-win situation there because you're right. No one will praise him, and I think he's actually a genius. Is he going to be a good to great NBA head coach? I think that still remains to be seen. There's a lot more than just being a genius, as a matter of fact. But he is one of those no-win situation. Even if they win the title this year, he'll be like Casey Jones when they won it in '86. Well, what did you have to do? Just roll the basketballs out? I love Joe Mazzulla. I really liked Ime Udoka too, because they're guys who just aren't going to take any crap. And really, I think that's what you need in the NBA. You don't need the days of the hard ass are over, but you just need to be able to, talk with your players. And I think Mazzulla does that. He doesn't ever get too high, doesn't ever get too low. I know that's cliche, but he does that. And I think he's an offensive genius. It's kind of sad that Milwaukee is now not the main contender for them in the East because he figured Milwaukee out. Like they've worn them out the last 2 years, but Milwaukee is not the other main contender. So I think the Knicks are right now.
Well, we'll see what happens tonight. They play
but
the
I like
Sixers.
Mazzulla a lot. And
yeah, he's a Bob Huggins guy.
Yeah.
He, by the way, he doesn't drink. I'm a sober guy. He had some stuff go on. He got arrested at a Pirates game, getting into a fight when he was at West Virginia. Something like at a bar fight, and he just stopped. I think when he was at West Virginia or right after. And he's just low key about it because he's low key about a lot of things. He's just super cool.
Which I'm sure you've talked to guys like that on the pod, right? Who just some guys it's easy. They can just give it up. And I don't know what the clues are for that, but he seems like he has that kind of personality.
Yeah.
And my best friend from home, he was teaching or coaching. He was working at a YMCA just outside of Boston. This is a year or two ago. 2 years ago, I guess. He taught Joe Mazzulla's son how to play basketball. He was in the camps. My buddy was teaching him how to dribble and stuff. And Joe used to pick him up every day. And my buddy knew that he was an assistant for the Celtics, not a high-level assistant. And one day, the kid's mom picked him up. And that night, Mazzulla, they got rid of Udoka and announced Mazzulla's that coach.
Back row Joe became front row Joe.
Yeah, and I'm like, dude, could you imagine having to teach the head coach of the Boston Celtics' son basketball, Tiger Woods' son how to putt? That's insane.
Well, it says to me that dad's cool because he's okay, you can learn this skill somewhere else.
Yeah, from Rockland High star, Mike.
Yeah. So where'd you go to high school?
Rockland High School, baby.
Oh, so your buddy went to Rockland too. Where did you grow up? What part?
So it's a town about 15 miles south of Boston. So small town. I'm a small town kid.
What's it called?
Close enough to Boston. It's Rockland.
Okay, Rockland. Okay,
Rockland, Mass.
Bad.
Rockland High.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'd say Rockland, Mass. Kiss my butt. It's total nothing town. Nothing comes in. Nothing comes out. I'm probably on the Mount Rushmore of most famous people from Rockland just by being on this show.
Okay. Yeah.
But we do have a huge TikTok star from Rockland.
Who's that?
Brianna Chicken Fry.
Oh,
Barstool Sports.
Dude.
Yeah.
She just came across my feed for something.
No kidding.
Yeah.
She went to high school with me. She's a couple years younger than me,
I looked
but
her up.
grew up 4 houses
Was
down.
Was that a Portnoy thing? Was she involved with something like that? I feel
yeah. So she got the job for being big on TikTok. gangbusters on TikTok. And then she did I don't know if they still do it. I should check. She and another TikTok guy would do a show with Portnoy that would basically be like, here's the trends. Haha, Portnoy's an old guy. He doesn't know. And then he'd snap back and like they wouldn't know who Bruce Springsteen was.
Do you like Portnoy?
Know. Yeah, man.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, he's great. I am a child of Barstool too.
Yeah.
Like that was like I don't want to be that guy, but I was into it and my friends were into it before it really took off at all. Like they were still out of Milton. In fact, they started their first office was the town right next to Rockland. So yeah, we've been in it. The newspaper.
I knew him before. Todd McShay was my buddy. They both went to Swampscott.
Swampscott.
They went to Swampscott with another dude named Todd Klein, who like runs Tottingham, the soccer team over there. Great dude.
I didn't know that.
Peter Woodfork. He's worked for Major League Baseball in the front offices there. This other guy, Traeger DePietro, is like an incredible artist. McShay and Portnoy. They were all in the same.
Man.
They were all in the same class. It's kind of crazy. So
it's crazy.
Todd,
I mean, that's Swampscott's almost like Rockland. So I say like nothing goes on in Rockland. I mean, it's a little nicer for sure, but it's not like this huge. It's not like South Lake to Dallas or something.
It's amazing. So I got to know Todd and I worked together and lived together because we went to Richmond and then we worked for the War Room and all that stuff, the Football Scouts Inc. And I met Portnoy a bunch of times, hung out with him a lot. He was always so cool, big personality, just like interjecting. I knew a little bit about Barstool. And then you turn around. Yeah, he was always like a fun guy to have around. He was not like, now he's sort of imposing. He wasn't back then.
He was just a dude, yeah.
He was just a cool dude with a lot of opinions that would with you. Let's bleep that out. That would mess with you. Mark that.
I made sure to ask in my initial interviews what we could get away with.
You can say it. I don't want to say it. All right, so let's get.
Your mom listens, so yeah.
She does sometimes.
Yeah, no, so I get it.
Yeah. I'm more just afraid of everything, losing my job and stuff. So I mean,
that's local news, man. The news did it to you.
But even after the news, it's just So I wanted to ask you today about Baylor football and Baylor basketball.
Let's do it.
I want to get Big 12 focused here with you. Baylor football doesn't have anybody get drafted. This is something that I know as a Baylor alum and somebody who's very close to the program covering it, disappoints you on a couple of different levels. Walk us through what goes on through someone like you and their mindset when you see that this team, who was a top 5 team, just a couple years removed, had no player drafted. And what were there, 11 teams, Power 5 teams, other teams?
I think 11 total. And like it sucks because those other teams,
11 other Power 5 teams who didn't have anyone drafted.
Were like Nebraska, who's I think on the come up with Matt Rule. I believe in that, but it's like Northwestern, Indiana, Georgia Tech. Like these are the schools we laugh at for football. We laugh at these programs, and Baylor is now within that. Right? And like I thought back to my freshman year was Art Briles last year. And that draft, we had like 5 or 6 guys, and that was an every year thing. And it's not like they were all going to be all pros or anything, but they were getting drafted. And Baylor was a name on draft day. And I looked back at it, the 4 years that Aranda's been here, in 2022, which was his second draft, they had 6 guys taken. That was after the Sugar Bowl year, the Big 12 year. Awesome season for the Bears. Great. But the year before that, his first year, they had 1 guy drafted. The year after that, he had 1 guy drafted. And now he has 0 guys drafted this year. That sucks, man. Like that is, you're not winning on the recruiting trail. You're not winning on the field, and you're not winning in the draft room either. So it's like, it's obviously not a low point for Baylor football. They had plenty of those before the 21st century. But like, this is not a great situation to be in, and we didn't have a lot to root for during the season, and to then be like, we can't promise you wins and championships, and we also can't promise you getting to the next level. It's not a good situation to be in. I don't want to be a Northwestern, a Wake Forest. I aspire to be a program that has as many draft picks as a South Dakota State, let's say. I think we'll get there someday.
When you talk about the Baylor football team and their off-season experience, they have landed a couple of eye-opening transfers.
Yeah.
I mean, the portal has, I don't know if you'd say it's been very good to Baylor, but it's been decent. It's been good.
Yeah, I would say, like, when you look at it from a bird's eye view for this season, I think you can't deny that they've had a pretty good offseason.
The Ashton Hawkins is good.
Yeah.
He is good. He was Texas State. I remember
That's a starting
him.
receiver right there in the portal. And, like, let's be honest. Anytime you're grabbing any kind of starters in the portal, that's nice, right? So I look at it, starting receiver in Hawkins, probably your starting quarterback in Finn, starting guard. I think he added 3 starting defensive players this week.
What happened to the guy Mike
portal.
Smith from last year?
Mike
something, who was a great middle linebacker. He was a transfer from, I think, Liberty.
Yes, you're right. He got hurt.
Who got hurt?
His knee.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that was it. I remember when he blew his knee out, but
Mike
he's
Smith. Yeah, you're right.
So he's done.
I think so. I don't think he has eligibility left.
Okay.
And so you look at that, and then you look at, okay, you lost your starting quarterback from last year. You're probably, I think a lot of fans are ready to move on. You lost your starting tight end. That's a big loss. But other than that, it's all 3 receivers this week that had a combined 19 catches. A bunch of reserve guys, and you got rid of reserves. You added starters. To me, that's a win, and I love the way they went at offensive coordinator with Spavital. Like, the quarterbacks he's worked on has been incredible. And they're now making a commitment to a fast, up-tempo kind of offense.
Yeah, how much different is this offense going to be? Last year, when they had the RVO, right? The what was it? Something
reliable, violent offense.
Yeah, the reliable, violent offense. Right, so they fire the offensive coordinator.
Which last year, by the way, I don't know if any of those things were true. It wasn't reliable, it wasn't very violent, and at times it wasn't even offense.
Yeah. I mean, and the year before or 2 years before that, it was so RVO, right?
Absolutely,
and then
it worked.
We watched kind of a slow decline, and the problem with an offense like that, when you have like a ball control, we throw when we have to, maybe we'll surprise you once in a while. And it stinks. It's tough to watch, and so part of the fan base, they lost. There was apathy around the program last year, which was a total bummer because I love Dave Aranda. I want to see this team and this coaching staff do well. So he made the right move. But how much, in my opinion, how much different will this offense be?
It will be different.
Are we talking night and day?
I mean, yes. Yeah. I mean, and actually there was a good interview with that our pal Matt Mosley did with Mason Miller, the new offensive line coach, and he gets really down in the football weeds, and I won't get there, but he was basically talking about how much different the offensive line has to be from this style of offense. Like, it is just like throw out the playbook entirely, throw out everything you did last year. That's how different the style is. Now, that said, are they going to be putting up 60 points a game this year? No. This is a thing that a style of offense that can accelerate your program back into relevance just by being what it is, but it does not jump you to 8 or 10 wins from 3 wins in year 1. It doesn't. And we saw that. I mean, it's very similar to the Briles style of offense that we're familiar with at Baylor, and that took a couple of years. That was year 4 when it started to come together, when RG3 won the Heisman. They didn't make a bowl game until the 3rd season. So, like, that takes some time, and it really took, 5 or 6 years to perfect it, to be a BCS bowl team. So, it will be night and day. Make no mistake about it. It'll be more exciting, but there's a lot that needs to happen to get to play that style of offense and also win at the highest level.
What do you like about Daquan Finn? Is he going to start?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
Sawyer Robertson last year, the transfer from Mississippi State, struggled when given opportunities to play.
Yeah, and the problem with Sawyer, too, was he was a guy who is from the air raid style of offense. Played it in high school, played it under Mike Leach at Mississippi State, and now all of a sudden he's got to run the wide zone, which is just not the same at all. I actually think, and I'm trying not to be too much of a homer here because Lord knows I could be pretty critical of the football team. But I think
we do, and I want you to be critical here.
Well,
be
I'm
yourself.
not pulling any punches here. Yeah. But I think, all that to say, I think whichever one is the starter, because it still could be Robertson, I suppose, you're in a good position. Because I like Daquan Finn, or Daquan. We've heard both ways. Okay. Another thing that our pal Matt Mosley said, which I happen to agree with, I see a lot of Trevon Boykin there. Remember Trevon Boykin?
Yeah,
the All-American
the big
from
guy.
TCU.
Yeah.
I mean, a guy who can get the ball down there, not completing 75% of his passes, but the escapability, man. Dave Aranda called him an 11th guy that you needed to defend, and Baylor hasn't had that in the last 2 years with Blake Shapen. Gary Bohannon was a heck of a runner, but he also had deficiencies in the passing game. I think Daquan Finn is a guy who can scramble, who can extend plays, and he was the only one that I saw out of that portal that Baylor could realistically add that could add a win or two to their schedule. Like, I think, is he going to be a Heisman finalist? No. Is he going to be an all Big 12? Probably not. But I think he's going to be a step up at that position, and that elusiveness as well as an accurate deep ball, that plays really well for the style of offense that they're going for.
All right, how about the Baylor basketball team, just to kind of wrap it up with you? Yes. I know, obviously, there's been a lot of scuttlebutt about what supposedly was going to happen in the portal. Some has, some hasn't, right? What have you liked about what's going on in the portal for Baylor?
Love the Jeremy Roach edition.
Yeah, well, of course, because he's from Duke.
Yeah. Started almost 100 games at Duke.
Yeah.
Led them to a Final Four. Point guard, pressure pack position, pressure pack program.
He comes, Miro Little says, okay, I'm out of here.
Yeah, he's like, that's probably not for me, which is too bad. I like Miro.
Yeah.
But I love the Jeremy Roach edition. And in terms of, like, additions in the offseason that we didn't know were coming, that's it. That's the only guy you've added in the portal. I love this recruiting class they've got coming in.
What about the freshman they have? The guy who committed like right after Drew said he was coming to back to Baylor.
So we have the three guys that are coming in. VJ Edgecombe.
Edgecombe's the guy, right? He was a McDonald's All-American.
Yeah, number 3 prospect in the class, and moved up, which is tough to do at that stage. So you got VJ Edgecombe, Jason Asamoah, who's a Massachusetts guy, Massachusetts guy, playing out in Arizona, who's kind of under the radar.
Yeah.
And then Rob Wright, who is the point guard of Montverde, who won the national championship in high school and probably got snubbed to be an All-American himself. So this is the best class they've ever had coming in. And
they've ever had?
Ever had. I'm telling you.
Wow.
I mean, VJ Edgecombe himself might be the best player they've ever brought in. Isaiah Austin was like a top 10, top 5 guy. But other than that, this is it. And everyone's saying he's the most explosive player in the class. There's Russell Westbrook comps. Like, this kid is next level good. He'll be a one and done. So I think, they've missed out on some guys in the transfer portal, most notably Jonas Adu, the center, who's going to Arkansas, which that's no small loss. Like, Baylor still needs, as we are in May, they still need a starting center for next year. But Jeremy Roach, I love that addition. And the recruiting class they're bringing in is second to none. And so all that to say, right now, they're a top 10 team. If they had someone like an A2 at center, which is easier said than done, they're a top 5 team, which still might put them 4th in the Big 12. But they are ready to compete again, no doubt.
How are you feeling about the Big 12, the expansion going into next year? I mean, it's really gangbusters when you I start to look at the teams and think about games I'll be calling next year, and I'm just like, wow, it's really hard to even wrap your mind around it.
I mean,
like Arizona State. I honestly, I forgot about them. I remembered Arizona.
So is the college sports world, if we're being honest, Pete.
But I mean, it's just amazing. Like, there's teams and schools on the fringes that have now become a part of this incredible situation.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So in terms of like the conference standpoint, you add Arizona. That's a top 10 team all year long, most years, if we're being honest. A Colorado team that won a tournament game last year too. Arizona State suddenly got money to throw around with Bobby Hurley and finally giving him a shot, I guess. Like, this is just adding to the best basketball conference in America. And I think, to your point about some of like the schools on the fringes, all of a sudden, because of this year, you can't count out an Arizona State or even a Utah, which is not anything to write home about at basketball, because shoot, man, UCF knocked some teams off this year. UCF beat Kansas.
Yeah.
Like, they gave Baylor a good run in that game. Like, UCF, if they played that way in the American, they were a tournament team.
Yeah.
And so, like, that was one where you were like, well, they can't hang with anybody. Cincinnati had not a lot of prospects going into the year. They were probably one win away from being a tournament team. So these teams, they can come in and they take it seriously and they can compete. I know the ACC got the last laugh in the tournament of being, quote unquote, a better basketball conference that should have had more teams in there. But make no mistake about it, top to bottom, it is the Big 12 and then everybody else.
Now, do you feel like, as far as Baylor is concerned? Are they in a good spot going into next season in the conference?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, good spot. I can't help but think of the guys they could have brought in to put them in a great spot.
Yeah.
But again, like I said, even if they were top 5, you're third or fourth in the conference. Kansas is going to be number 1. Houston's probably going to be number 2. Iowa State, you can't keep them out of the top 5 with all they bring back. So you're going to have some good games to call, Pete. This is going to be bananas.
You grew your beard back pretty fast. A couple of days ago, it was just a mustache.
Beard.
Is that what that is?
Beard. Yes.
So what does your
So I
girlfriend
can
say
trim here.
about all the sports and the hockey and the basketball? Is she like, oh, this again?
I mean, kind of, yeah.
Especially this time of year.
Yeah. Well, we have, like, Cam Stewart has left the building for hopefully a couple months. This is Stewie playoffs, okay? This is night after night. And finally, they're staggered again, the Bruins and the Celtics. So it is night after night after night. She just knows we can't do anything. She doesn't even like sports. Doesn't like
really?
it, doesn't care about it.
Is she in the room with you?
Right now?
Is she in the room with you during these games?
A lot of the times, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she'll just hang out, play on her phone, like that kind of thing.
It's the way it is.
She does like hockey.
Okay.
We're getting her there. She did make an interesting comment a couple nights ago when we were watching a game, and she was like, I just wish I knew what a good play was. And I was like, what? What do you mean? And she was like, I just wish I could see a play and know it's a good play rather than waiting for your reaction. So she wants to be something of a fan. That's what that tells me. You know what I mean? So
she's not far behind me. I mean, I'm not a huge hockey guy. Yeah.
Oh man, she's getting it. She's impressed by how they can play a game on skates. So like we'll go to hockey games. She likes that.
Okay.
That's the one. And soccer she'll watch a bit of, but baseball, no way. She really doesn't watch football. And basketballs. She likes going to the Foster Pavilion though.
Oh, she does?
She likes going to, likes the atmosphere around it. But I'm thinking with women, and I've noticed this in my time of dating women, my illustrious history of dating women, usually there's one sport that they can latch onto, whether they already have or not.
Yeah.
Like there's one sport. And, you know.
Well, and you got to be yourself too. I've gotten into trouble in the past.
And I don't mean that to be like, I'll say it to the camera. Women can like sports. I'm not saying that. Pete knows what I'm talking about. But I've dated women who don't care about sports at all, and they'll find one that they really like.
Yeah, I agree. And I think sometimes you'll even have you need to make sure that you're, and I can appreciate that you're not. You don't want to be a people pleaser and say like, oh, that's not what. Cam Stewart, playoff Stewie watches the games.
Stewie playoffs, yeah.
Stewie
Well, I will say, like, the thing I really appreciate is she didn't grow up in it, doesn't fully understand what it means to me, but understands that it means a lot to me.
Where's she from?
Like, she's from Charlotte.
Oh, Charlotte.
Yeah.
That's I lived there
know
for a while. Yeah.
you cut your teeth there.
I love Charlotte. Yeah, yeah. That's
And
cool.
Charlotte's a nice place. I wouldn't call it a Philly or a Boston in terms of a sports.
No,
town.
because there's people are normal there.
Yeah, and they're all from somewhere else.
And they do other things.
But like, so she didn't grow up in it. Like her parents aren't big sports fans or anything, but she understands that it means something to me. Like maybe she doesn't understand why I'm breaking stuff, but like
Do you rage?
I do rage. I'm much more controlled now. So we have a shed, and we have like a chair that we've never used, like a metal chair, and I'll rage on that if it's really bad. Usually I can keep it like I'm just like clenching my teeth and yelling something, but she gets that it means a lot to me, and like doesn't want to be like, oh, it's just a stupid game. Why can't we do this thing because you're watching
26 years of age.
Yeah.
Okay.
Almost 27.
Almost 27.
27 club.
Do you ever, because me now, I am to the point where I get frustrated with my fandom. Like if I'm watching one of my teams and I'm getting really upset, I'm like, what? Like I need another headache in my life.
Yeah.
Now, do you ever have those moments when you're like, I'm too deep in this?
Brother, all the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
Because it really does, as a fan,
like,
as
what are you,
people
a
listening to this
child?
can appreciate or watching. Yeah, I mean, you have to ask yourself the question, like, I'm not going to sleep tonight because Villanova didn't advance in the NCAA tournament, and I may not sleep tomorrow night.
Yes. And so that's always been like a diehard thing for me, but I'm telling you, Pete, there are some times, I think of like when the Celtics made the finals a couple years ago, I was like, I had just left a career, like I was basically jobless and, living off her for a couple months, as a matter of fact. And the Celtics made the finals, and I was like, I needed that in my life, which I need that in my life when I'm 16, not when I'm 24 at that point.
Dude, I hear you.
You know, and like, I'll still, like, if the Bruins don't win this game tonight, which you'll obviously know by now, and they don't finish off Toronto, I will be thinking, oh my God, here we go. Game 7. It's going to happen again. They're going to blow a 3-1 lead. It's going to go to Game 7. I'm not going to sleep well for the next couple of nights. It's going to be – and, like, when they have extra days off in between the playoff games, it's the worst.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, this will be all that I think about.
Yeah.
In fact, the Celtics play the Heat. Like, that has been torture the last couple of years. I almost don't even enjoy watching it, Pete. That's how deep into this I am. Because I'm like, I know something's around the corner that's going to piss me off.
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah, I do. To answer your question, though, I am sometimes like, what is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? And it's good to know that that's not going to go away for a while.
Yeah. It'll be
yeah,
there.
like I still, and like as bad as the Patriots were this year, I couldn't miss a game.
Well, and then there's,
I've missed
there's
watching
also
one game in 17
the thread
years.
that it keeps so many of us together. It keeps families together. It keeps communicating. So there's a beautiful thing there. All right, Cam, anything else before I let you go?
No, I probably took up too much of your time.
No, you didn't. The Cam Stewart Show. Is that what we're calling it?
I guess, yeah. Honestly, Zach and I have been brainstorming. I have not thought of anything better. So I think we're rolling with Cam Stewart Show. It's tough to cancel. Tough to bring in a new host. So.
The Cam Stewart Show. I can't wait, dude. Thanks for spending time with me. You can hear him right now on Locked On, of course, every day. That you do that every day.
Yeah.
There's something to be said, and sometimes on Saturday. Oh,
yeah,
controversial
so 5 days a
topic.
Week, but
I got a controversial topic for you. All right.
Oh, gosh, here we go.
So I am doing the Big 12 softball tournament for ESPN, right? So I'm doing the first 3 rounds. Okay. I thought what happened with that young woman from Baylor, I thought it sucked.
Yeah.
A girl was shoplifting. I mean, it's out there. And I don't want to say her name because I liked her so much. She was shoplifting and she was booted off the team. Baylor did what they had to do. But where I work, my news station, I was in Salt Lake. I had a game for a BYU game.
What? You did a BYU game?
I did a bunch. Yeah.
Pete did like every BYU game.
So I was there, and it came across my phone as it was KWTX. It was an alert from us.
Yeah, Channel 10
we really put it out there. And I was like, oh, my gosh. And then you picked it up. You did a whole podcast on it. I'm like, which I understand.
Which ruffled some feathers.
I'm
but I was
sure
like,
it
hey,
did.
it was already reported. It had been reported.
It was already reported. And, it is what it is. Mm-hmm. I mean, as a person, if I do something wrong, right, it's already done. It's out there.
Yeah.
So like there are consequences for doing stupid things in life. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like if you tell somebody a secret and they tell somebody else and you're pissed at them for telling somebody else that secret. Well, you told them.
Yeah.
It came out of your mouth. So what was your thinking behind doing that? Honestly,
Pete, I didn't even want to do it because I was just like.
For people who don't know softball, this girl is probably the best player on the team. The team has survived.
Yeah.
They're doing pretty well. She was the best player on the team. She had a big personality. She was doing stuff like with the school, like YouTube videos. So go ahead.
So I honestly
I'm giving you a chance to clear your name.
It's funny to say I didn't even want to do it because I was pretty quick onto it. But like total honesty here, I just didn't think it was like that big a deal. It's one of those where should she be held accountable? Yes, like broke the law. But to me, it's like there, but for the grace of God, go I as a college student. You know what I mean? So I was like, this ain't a big deal. Like it's pretty much a victimless crime if we're being honest. So I didn't really want to do it. But honestly, I had this thought when I saw that KWTX had it. I was like, am I going to get in trouble for not doing this? Is this going to blow up tonight? And I'm going to be the only sucker who doesn't talk about it. And so I was like, kind of begrudgingly did it. And it did ruffle some feathers that I did that. But I was just like, and I wasn't in a position at that time when it broke to be as honest as I just was with you of like, what's the big deal?
Well, dude, I so appreciate you taking us under the hood and into the thought and the thought process that goes into that as somebody who's hosting a show in today's day and age. I mean, I agree with you. Once KWTX comes out with that, my man Tommy Witherspoon breaks the story. Tommy Two Fingers, because he types real slow, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Tommy's doing his job too. I think for me, I was just bummed out because, I have a history. being sober now for a while, I did a lot of dumb stuff. Now, I will tell you, if I wasn't held accountable for that dumb stuff, I don't know that I'd be here sitting with you today.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
consequences are important. I just, I hate seeing that happen to people.
Yeah, and I wish I could have gone on the next day and just been like, okay, now that I told you the story, here's what I think. And it was one where I wasn't like trying to put opinion in it or anything. I try not to for breaking news stuff, but I was just like, I didn't feel great about it afterwards. Not that I should not have done it, but I was just like, Not that I should not have done it, but it was one of those where it's like, what would have really happened if I didn't do it?
Yeah, no, I appreciate your honesty. It's something I wanted to ask you about. I was
And
going to
that's
ask
not,
you
it's
about.
not that way. It's not that way for a lot of the stories.
Yeah.
But for that one, I was just like, and like you said, I mean, she was active. Like she was very well liked, and it's just one of those where I was just like, personally, I don't think it's a big deal. I know a lot of people do think it's a big deal.
Yeah. I think it's a mistake a young kid made.
It's like I did plenty of dumb stuff as a high school and a college kid. I got caught for some of it. I guess it wasn't, the monetary value, but I did a lot of dumb stuff, man. So that's why I was like, I feel for this girl. She's a college kid.
Yeah. Well, you're very talented at what you do.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you being honest with us. I appreciate you coming on today. I was telling you earlier, I listened to Chris Russo today. And I listened to your podcast, Locked On, within like 3 hours of each other. And honestly, dude, I wouldn't have known the difference. I mean, obviously, just to hear me out. Yeah. I know it's an acquired taste for certain people, but you can carry a show. You deliver it. That is not easy. Sitting down for 30 minutes, holding your own, keeping people's attention, which goes back to what we just talked about, right? Like there are certain things that you have to do to stay interesting and to interest people. So, yeah, keep it up, man. We're happy to have you. Right,
Thanks.
Zach?
I'm happy to be here.
Zach's shaking his head.
Zach is happy for me. I'm happy to be with Zach.
All right, go easy on your girlfriend tonight. I appreciate you.
Go Breeze.
All right. 1. Tim, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You can leave that in there. Tim Brando, Cam Stewart, and the story about my ears getting pinned back and Zach getting a shot that was supposed to be in his labrum that went in the wrong place. Could you ask for more? And yes, we will be back. Episode 8 coming up next week. We're loading up.
We are Rogue Media Sports.